I would like to call the special meeting of the City Council to order. Deputy City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Mora. Here. Councilmember Sarno. Here. Councilmember Trujillo. Mayor Pro Tem Zamora. Here. And Mayor Rodriguez.
Here. Thank you. Public comments are now open. Anyone joining us through Zoom can use the raise hand function if you wish to make a public comment on any item on the agenda. The city clerk will see if you have raised your hand through the Zoom application. For those that are here to make a public comment in person, you will have an opportunity once the city clerk announces your name. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Deputy City Clerk, do we have any members of the public present that wish to speak today?
Nobody in person wishes to speak and nobody via Zoom wishes to speak.
Thank you. I will now close public comments and move to item number 4, 2022 through 2025 Capital Improvement Plan. I would like to call on Director of Public Works, Noe Negrete.
Madam Mayor, okay, here we go. Try one more time. Hi, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having me here today. We're here at the special study session to talk about our capital improvement plan. And I'm going to recap how we got here first. So if you recall, we initially started this process back in September, where we asked the council and all the departments and staff to give us their wish list of projects. That was originally had 158 projects at just under $200 million. We had a follow-up study session in November, where we got that down to 71 projects and $67 million. And today, with your help, we're going to be recommending 41 projects for just under $28 million. And we did a lot of work since November. And if you recall, this was your homework assignment, and this was the available funding for us to look at for projects. So we have 3, or we'll call it 4 different pots of funds that we need to look at allocating funds to. The largest one is the UUT, followed by the redevelopment bond, street resurfacing fund, just over $1 million. And then we do have a couple of projects that are already funded using grants. The total there being $29 million, it's available. And originally we talked about using $20 million of UUT. Happy to tell you that you all came in consensus under the $20 million. So you do have a little bit of wiggle room. And remember that this plan is an ever-evolving, ever-changing plan. So just because tonight, if you go with the staff recommendation of the 41 projects, we can still add projects to this later. Right? This is just our guideline, our path of projects that we're taking starting in 2022. So let's go through the process here real quick. You all have seen these multiple times now. And the first one I want to go over is Exhibit A. So the good news for you, we're not going to go over your project. Okay, you guys have done that already. And we met on a one-on-one study session to do that as well. We can go to Exhibit A in the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, the main thing to take away out of this spreadsheet is we had individual meetings with you after the November meeting where we went over each project, and we had you guys asked questions. We gave you questions on scope of work. The main thing is each of you had a vote in terms of deciding which project you wanted to go forward with. So in the spreadsheet that you see there, CM1 through CM5 is council member 1, council member 2, all the way to 5. If there is an amount in that box, that is the project that you voted to go forward with. The tally on the red, see where it says project CIP projects? Any project that had 3 or more votes was a favorable project that we're recommending to you today. I'm happy to tell you that over 80% of these projects have 4 or 5 votes for them. So there's a lot of consensus in the group here in terms of what path, what direction that you want the staff to take in the projects. So anything that's highlighted in that red there, it's a vote that got 3, 4, or 5 projects. And again, you did have a lot of consensus in these projects. If you can start to scroll down a little bit, They were by categories, so facilities, streets. If you could stop on the streets there real quick. If you recall, one of the struggles that you did have was on the commercial streets. And I told you that afterwards, we would look at that as a staff, and I would make a recommendation to you in terms of the commercial streets. I think on the residential side, there was a lot of consensus to do those streets, and that's why they're on the list. And what we found is that we actually had $8 million available to us in the redevelopment bond fund. For those of you that don't remember or need a refresher, when we did have the redevelopment agency, we had money in there. Those were for projects that only could be used in the redevelopment zone. So unfortunately, the residential is not part of the redevelopment zone, but the commercial is. So we are basically recommending to you tonight is all the streets that we had recommended to you prior, the commercial streets, is to fund those using the bond fund. And then there's 2 streets there that we can fund using street resurfacing funds. Those are fees that we've collected throughout the years as developers have developed. And we can get all of our priority 1 streets done with the exception of 2. So in 2016, we did a street assessment. They ranked all the streets 1 through 5. 1 being the worst street, 5 being a brand new street. What we have before you is we can actually, with that $8 million, do all those streets with the exception of 2 streets on our priority 1 list without having to touch the UUT funds. So we think that's great news in terms of our commercial side, not having to use our UUT funds to be able to do that. Keep on scrolling down. So lastly, when you look at these numbers here, when we scroll down, again, for the so if you could see all the different numbers there, you could see everybody's 17, 15, 17, 22, 21. The consensus, though, is under the $20 million. Let's go to Exhibit B. So the importance of that slide A is to show you that everybody had a vote in this, and the projects that are going forward being recommended are those projects that have 3 or more council members recommending that. And again, over 80% of them had 4 votes or 5. So again, you guys had a lot of consensus in the direction you wanted us to go into. Any questions? I'll stop there. A lot of information to take in. And you guys did fantastic in your homework, by the way. That was a great exercise. And I want to thank you for coming in prepared and with questions. That really helped us as a staff determine the direction to go forward in. So Exhibit B here pares down. This is only the recommended projects. So you have that in your packet. And we've taken out all everybody's votes. But now, well, after you told us what projects to do, we had to go figure out how to fund them. Okay. So in the column, you'll see it says funding source. You'll see either UUT or bond or street resurfacing. The ones that don't say that are the ones we're looking at pursuing other people's money. So either a grant, could be Measure R, could be the gas tax, those type of things. So if you scroll down, Alex, again, we're not going to go through every project unless you have a question on those. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. So we were trying to get 17 million for the UT, 8 million for the bond, and $1 million for the street resurfacing. And you can see at the very bottom there in the blue, the UUT, the consensus projects is $15.8 million. So we're actually under. So again, I commend you for doing that. Number 2, the bond is at $7.8 million. So you have just under $200,000 of left in there. And then the street resurfacing, 1.17, where we have 1.2. So in no case are we exceeding the amount of available funding. We actually have more wiggle room. And that's important because the one project here that we're going to have another study session on is the Aquatic Center. Right now, we have budgeted about $3.8 million in this recommended project. But that's really to just rebuild what we have. And in the one-on-one meetings, it was clear to me that it seems that the council would like to go a little bit more than just doing what is there now. So we would need to have a separate follow-up study session to refine that scope and then determine how we're going to complete that funding. I know that City Manager's office is actively looking at pursuing grants for that. but we need to define what the scope of work is to be able to get the true cost and to see what we can go out and get from a grant standpoint. All the other projects, we're very confident in telling you have a very defined scope of work, and there's no need to have any kind of subsequent follow-up meeting. So with that, that's how we get the total of just under $28 million for this 4-year CIP. I'll stop there. Any questions?
So for the pool itself, we're going to do a separate, completely separate study session to find out the route of where we're going to go with it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We think that's the best way to define what it is we want to put back there. For example, do we want to demo it all? Do we want to keep the buildings remaining? Do we want 2 pools versus 1 pool? Do we want to add a splash pad there? Slides. Those are all kind of the ideas that came about during this process. So we would recommend that we would do a separate study session just on that.
No, I just heard you mention we have budget 3.8 million to replace what we have at the pool, but I thought the initial estimate was $6 million to do exactly what we have there and replace it, and something over 10 million to do something more, extravagant.
Yeah, good question. So anywhere between 7 and 10 is to add new amenities. To repair it just in its current condition, the way it is now is roughly the 3.8. If you want to start adding different amenities, then the price tag starts growing. So pick a number, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just depending on what you want to see there. And that's why we want to have a separate study session to get more detailed and to refine that so we can understand what it is we want to put back so we can put the proper price tag on that.
Well, I think it's also going to be a big question mark of what's going to happen with the LA County at the Pioneer High School. What business is that going to take from us from here? What amenities are they going to have there that, so that would be a big difference for us here because, we were the only local one besides Splash in La Mirada to have a pool that we had residents that would come here and swim and stuff like that. But I think having a newer pool over there by Pioneer might take away some of the pizzazz of what we have here. So I think we need to really focus on rebranding us and really making us a different than what they already have there to get people to come here and populate it more better. So.
Any questions on the process?
No, just to commend you on the fact that you already put the pool and set it aside for a different study session. I'm glad you had the foresight to actually do that. So it helps us out just so it's just one topic at hand. Thank you, Noe.
Any questions on the numbers here that you see in front of you in terms of how we got there? Again, I think it's commendable that we're under budget in terms of the available funding. And for those of you that don't remember, so each year we put away roughly, let's just say $3 million. So what we'll do is, as we set this aside, in that 4-year period, we won't try to touch that other 3 million. So we keep banking that. So by the time in 2025, when those projects are over, we will have banked $12 million to add to our current list. We think that's good financial sense in terms of doing this. And I do like the fact that we do have some wiggle room because I will guarantee you we're going to add projects. We always do, right? There's always a need. The infrastructure, unfortunately, isn't dormant, right? It doesn't take a break because we have no money or we don't have no priority. We need to continue. So this is evolving. So what happens today is great in terms of gives us as a staff the projects to work on, but we understand that there is changes that can happen, and we anticipate that, and we have money to be able to handle those situations as they arise. Okay. All right. So with that, let's go to Exhibit C, and I'm going to run through this really fast. And again, it's in your packet. But we do have an existing CIP. So I don't want you to get lost and say that we're tomorrow, we're not going to start on the other projects tomorrow, right? We have an existing CIP, and we do have 9 projects or 8 projects in construction. 1 is currently out to bid, is the Pioneer. We did add a column there for the estimated construction start date. First quarter, obviously the first 3 months, and then second quarter, the next 3, so on and so forth. So you can kind of have an idea of when we expect those projects to start construction. I do want to point out at the last meeting in November, there was an emphasis to look at not using our own money. And if you look at the column under other funds, you could see that the majority of these projects are funded using other people's money. A lot of them are the park projects with the Calderon money, but there's MTA, the gas tax for some of the street projects. So you can see our focus in for the next 6 months to 9 months is going to be on $3.8 million, not using our own money. That's a good model. Next, you go up a little bit, Alex. Again, the next one, there's always something in design behind that, right? So you have another, I think it's 15 projects if you go to the bottom there. And again, I'm not going to go over each one, but again, the focus has been on trying to focus on other people's money. You could see that $6.8 million of those next 16 projects we're finding. When I say other money, it's non-UUT money, right? That's our money. We're trying to save that to do what's essential, but if we can get other funds to pay for that, that's always going to be our first priority. And then last but not least, again, you can look at it in your packet. The blue ones show you that the projects that were done in 2021, 11 projects there. And on that one, the biggest one is the parking lot, which was funded by UUT, with the 3.8 of the 4.4. So we're starting to try to transition to use the other funding. And for just a reference point, we have $11 million left over in that CIP. So we're programming another 28 million, but we still have 11 that we're working with. So what we'll do is we'll work with you, the council, as well as the CIP subcommittee to start bringing online some of the other projects as we continue to still work on the older CIP. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, next slide. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Almost done here. I try to make a bet here for 25 minutes. See if I can win the bet. Okay, so we went through A, B, and C. Okay, so lastly, just to summarize here, what we have before you is our recommended 4-year CIP, 2022 to 2025. And again, we are asking you to adopt that. And we're also asking you to continue to reinforce the fact that we have the old CIP. We want to continue working on that. And lastly, it's just a lot of hard work went into this. Again, we started in September. So I do want to thank the council. We met, many times on this publicly, but we also met individually. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time, for reading all the projects. I really commend you. You know, Robert and I, Alex, we read these every day. But for you guys to read them, the questions that you guys had, I want to thank you for being really prepared. That really helped us as a staff in terms of being able to get the consensus on the projects. And lastly, there was a lot of consensus. That just tells me that as a whole, between the staff and the council, we really have a good direction in terms of what we want to do. Facilities was easily for roofs, a lot of streets that we hadn't been able to get to in the years past. Residential, I'm happy to tell you that curb and gutter, sidewalk, those type projects, slurry seal in the residential, high emphasis. Again, the commercial, using the bond funds, I think is an excellent way of trying to fund those. And our parks. That was really the consensus from you. And again, I think that this reflects a good path to get some of those facilities just back to our standard. So I want to thank the council, the CIP subcommittee, all the department heads, the managers that gave us the projects, their willingness to share with us the problems, to try to recraft those scope of work and look at that money. And last, I want to thank my staff. Tremendous amount of work went into this to try to make this easy for you to digest. That was really the whole goal. It's really for you to be able to understand. So I want to thank them for being able to do that. And there's a lot of numbers here, a ton of numbers. And I want to thank them for trying to make this as easy as possible. And again, this is still an evolving, right? We don't talk, like tomorrow, we can still talk about it. It's not like Bruno, right? You guys see Encanto? You still talk about this, okay? You still talk about it. So we plan to do that. It's a living, breathing list. Okay, and it's always ongoing, evolving. All right, with that,
No, I have a question.
yes.
If you don't mind making us a final draft of all the projects that we are actually going to move forward with, just so we have that on a smaller page, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's in Exhibit B was our attempt to try to get it onto the council agenda. If you'd like this to be in a bigger size, like 11 by
Yes, please.
17, we can do that.
Please.
And then Exhibit C is the one that's showing all the existing projects that we have going on, and we can blow those up bigger. Sorry, there is a lot of projects on there. We're happy to do that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
I just wanted to make one comment, was that I know that council recently asked staff to meet with our local legislators for grants for the CIP projects. So we had those meetings over the last 6 weeks, and we met with Congresswoman Linda Sanchez, Assemblywoman Lisa Calderon, and State Senator Bob Archuleta. And we had the long list, but we wanted to hit 4 projects we think we can get funding for. And some of you have already have spoken because they have mentioned that. So one was, number 1 priority was the pool. Number 2 is Lakeview, the playground, the water well treatment plant, and then Slauson Avenue. So we hit those 4. Noe sent them all the information to back that up, and we hit them at the right time, they said, because right now, fortunately, both at the federal and state level, there's a lot of money. They're doing earmarks again. And so again, I almost all of you have spoken to them and they knew about these projects. And Noe did a great job of giving them the backup material. And we're hoping we're going to be in line for some money from those 3 legislators. Thank you.
Thank you, Noe.
Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, is there a motion for the approval of item number 4?
I'll move, Joe Angel.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So ordered. I would like to adjourn this meeting.